All right, since I opened up the floodgates on the subject of the Mandela effect yesterday, I thought I would talk a little bit further about Mandela effect skepticism and why it's really a dead end, the way that some people carry it out or carry it forth. Now, I don't blame anybody for being a Mandela effect skeptic, because the Mandela effect is a pretty weird notion, and weird off the wall notions are, ought to be looked at with scrutiny. But I do find irritating when these skeptics are simply dismissive of a phenomenon that is really very real, in the sense that a lot of people are remembering these things. It's not just a notion of one or two people here or there. It's, in some cases, millions and millions of people. Now, I could go into why, I'm more skeptical of certain certain things that are said under the, or certain things that are claimed under the rubric of the Mandela effect. Mandela effect events. And yes, a lot of them surround things like pop culture. A lot of them surround things like movie quotes not being what you remember them being. And a lot of the movie quotes I'm more skeptical about, simply because, when Jaws was out in the movie theaters and when Empire Strikes Back was in the movie theaters, we're talking about a time before well before the internet, and even before video. So, it was more likely that people would go and watch these movies and then just remember these lines being a particular way, just from memory, and just because they would seem to be those lines. So I've never really been that swayed by the Luke, I am your father, versus no, I am your father thing, or the you're going to need a bigger boat versus the we're going to need a bigger boat thing from Jaws, among many other lines. But I do, when you talk about something like, as I mentioned last time, the Berenstain Bears, and you've got a crap ton of people who grew up with those books and remember them plainly being Berenstein, and suddenly you're just going to tell them all, oh, this is just a mass deception. You're just mass misremembering this series that these books that you saw in your school library every day, and these books that you had at home and that you read. Now, I was not a Berenstain Bears. I will stick with my original memory. I was not a Berenstain Bears fanatic by any means, but I knew them well. They were a familiar sight to me, and so here's the comparison I want to make for those for not for skeptics, because you're free to be skeptical and you should be skeptical, but for those who are simply dismissive. Let's say you grew up knowing that your mother's middle name was Katie, okay? And then you grow up and you're age, 36, and suddenly you find out that your somebody tells you that your mother's middle name wasn't Katie, it was Kathy. And you think to yourself, no, it was Katie. It's Katie. It's always been Katie. And then they say, well, you're wrong. Look at this document. Look at that document. It's Kathy. And you ask your mother, and she says, no, my middle name has always been Kathy. But you're not crazy. You're not delusional. You don't just make stuff up. Your mind doesn't just you have a mind that generally remembers things well. You're not in an early onset dementia kind of situation. So, everybody telling you, no, it's not Katie, it's never been Katie, it's always been Kathy. Really, that's not, she's your mom, right? You grew up knowing what her middle name was. And then say, okay, let's take that scenario and let's add to it. You have brothers and sisters, and they all remember the same thing that you remember about her middle name. And your father also remembers that her middle name was Katie. But no, everywhere you see now her middle name is Kathy, and you look at old photographs and it's always been, or old documents, and it's always been Kathy. This just seems like the kind of situation where you run into a conundrum. If you try to just say, oh, well, you've just been misremembering, you've always been misremembering, your siblings have always been misremembering, your father has always been misremembering. She's not your mother, right? She's my mother. She's their mother. She's my father's wife. So something similar happens when you knew, as well as you could know anything, you remember as well as you can remember anything. The name of this series of books. I didn't know the Berenstain Bears the same way I knew the Hardy Boys. I was a big fan of the Hardy Boys. I read Hardy Boys books all the time. But it would be the same. It would almost be like if somebody told me, oh well, they're not really the Hardy Boys. They're the Harday Boys. Harday, not Hardy. And they've always been the Harday Boys. And you and millions of other people are just misremembering. But in fact, look, here are some photographs from 1955 of the vintage books of the series, and it's the Harday Boys, and it's almost the same as that. It's not. It's only a very small step removed from that kind of memory. Now, I was not, as I said, the Berenstain Bears were never a huge part of my life the way that the Hardy Boys were for a little while there. But telling me and telling other people that oh well, you don't remember right, that's not really that's not much of a riposte, is all that I'm saying. When there is such a vast number of people who so clearly remember differently than what we're told it has always been, that's not, it's almost like, I don't know if there's any way it can be. I said before that, I welcome skeptics, and I do, but I in this case, if you're going to say, oh well, you and all the millions of other people are just misremembering, I don't think there's any way that doesn't come across as just being dismissive. I know that people misremember things. You misremember tiny things. You misremember things. You might think, oh yeah, I remember that day I had a white shirt on, and then you look back in photographs and actually you had a gray shirt on. That's more in the realm of movie quotes. Like you go and see a movie, and they say this, and you remember it being that. But anyway, that's just something I wanted to say with respect to this whole Mandela-effect question, which I know it's a fringe topic, and I know that some people don't take it seriously at all and just think it's silly to even mention it. But I mean, what the hell? Are we just going to be talking about how much we hate Joe Biden and and how everything is screwed up and how the election was rigged. Is that what we're going to talk about all the time? I mean, we might as well expand our conversation a bit. So that's what I'm doing. Like it or lump it. AntiNowicki, altrightnovelist.com.